Her voice trembled as it rose into the still air, fragile yet fierce with faith. "Dear God," she said, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Please, could you give me a daddy? Not later, right now. Please." The sound hung in the air, raw and trembling. Outside, thunder rolled over Savannah's skyline as if heaven itself had stopped to listen. What happened next, no one in that church would ever forget. Before the echo of her prayer had faded, someone stepped through the chapel doors. Stay with me, because what follows will make you question how fast heaven can truly answer. Lily Parker was 6, though life had made her older in ways no child should be. Her world was a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat where the smell of detergent never quite covered the scent of exhaustion. Her mother, Sarah, worked 2 jobs waitressing by day, cleaning offices at night, while Lily stayed with an elderly neighbor who sometimes forgot her name. On good days, they had pancakes for dinner. On bad days, they had cereal and prayer. But every night before sleep, Lily whispered the same plea. "God, please, send me a daddy who loves Mommy too." That Sunday morning, Sarah had left early for her shift at the diner on Broughton Street, leaving a note and a kiss on Lily's forehead. "Be good, my angel," she wrote, "and remember God listens." Lily dressed herself, slipped her small Bible into her backpack, and walked to St. Anne's Chapel. The air was thick with Georgia humidity, but she didn't care. She had a plan. If God was anywhere, he had to be at church. The chapel was quiet when she arrived. Sunlight poured through stained glass windows, splashing color across the wooden pews. She knelt near the altar, her tiny frame dwarfed by the vast silence. "It's me again," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I know you're busy, but I need help. Mommy works too hard, and I don't have anyone to play with. Other kids have daddies who clap at their recitals. I don't even have someone to walk me to school." Her voice faltered, then steadied with innocent resolve. "I'll take any daddy you send. Just, please send one today." Outside, a man named Michael Reynolds was pacing near his truck, frustrated. He had been visiting Savannah for a construction bid and had stopped for coffee when his golden retriever, Buddy, bolted into the streets. He chased the dog through the market square and up the church steps. "Buddy," he called, pushing open the chapel door, and froze. Inside, a little girl was praying so earnestly it made his chest tighten. The dog sat quietly near the pew, as if even he understood the sacredness of the moment. Michael stood still, transfixed by the child's voice. She wasn't asking for toys or candy. She was asking for love, protection, family. Words he hadn't heard in years. His own marriage had ended 2 winters ago, leaving a quiet ache he hadn't managed to name. And now, in this echoing church, a child was praying for the very thing he had once lost. He stepped closer, almost against his will. Lily turned and gasped. The morning light fell on him, tall, kind-eyed, a little disheveled from running after his dog. Her breath caught. "God," she whispered. Then louder, with unfiltered joy, "You answered." She ran down the aisle and wrapped her arms around his waist before he could react. "You really did it? God, you sent me a daddy." Michael froze, stunned. Hey there," he said, gently, kneeling to meet her eyes. "I'm not sure." But Lily shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks, smiling through them. "You came right after I prayed. You're my daddy. God doesn't make mistakes." For a moment, Michael couldn't find words. Something about the conviction in her little voice disarmed him. This wasn't a coincidence. It was as if the world had tilted slightly to make this meeting happen. He looked toward the altar, then back at her. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lily," she said proudly. "Lily Parker. Mommy says names mean something. Lily means hope." Michael smiled, his throat tight. "That sounds about right." He glanced around the chapel, his dog sitting obediently near the aisle as if waiting for divine instructions. "Well, Lily Parker, it's nice to meet you." "I'm Michael," she repeated softly, testing the sound. Then, almost whispering, "That's an angel's name. See, God really sent you." Outside, the storm clouds were breaking sunlight, slipping through the stained glass and falling across them both. For a long moment, neither moved. Michael finally exhaled, realizing his heart had started to ache in a way that felt strangely good, like an old wound remembering how to heal. "Tell you what," he said, standing and offering his hand. "Why don't we find your mom together, okay?" Lily grinned, slipping her small hand into his. "She's going to be so happy," she said. "She's been praying, too." As they walked down the steps, Buddy trotted beside them, tail wagging. Michael couldn't shake the sense that he hadn't just stumbled into a church, he had been led there. The timing was too exact, the feeling too real. He looked down at the little girl walking confidently beside him, her faith bigger than her frame, and wondered what kind of story God had just written them into. He didn't know yet that this small act of compassion would change not one life, but 3. If you were Michael that morning, would you have believed it was coincidence or a miracle? Tell me in the comments below, do you believe prayers can still be answered instantly? Because in the next chapter of this story, that question becomes impossible to ignore. Michael Reynolds had never been a man easily shaken, but that morning inside St. Anne's Chapel had left him silent for miles. As he drove his old Ford down River Street, the little girl's words replayed over and over, "You came right after I prayed. You're my daddy." Something in that voice and the absolute certainty of her faith had undone him. He could have walked away, told himself it was just a child's imagination. But he didn't, because something deep inside him knew this wasn't random. Later that afternoon, Michael found himself parked in front of a small diner tucked between a thrift store and a laundromat. The sign above the window read, "Savannah Grill, home of the best peach pie in Georgia." Through the glass he saw Sarah Parker Lily's mother balancing plates with the weariness of someone who hadn't rested in years. Her uniform was spotless, her smile automatic, her eyes distant. Michael didn't walk in, not yet. He sat there watching for a moment, realizing that this woman carried the same quiet exhaustion he had seen in countless men on job sites, people who worked hard because life had left them no other choice. When Sarah finally stepped outside for a break, Michael took a slow breath and approached her. "Ma'am," he began, voice calm but firm. She looked up wary, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Can I help you? I met your daughter this morning," he said, holding his hands up as if to show he meant no harm. At the chapel, she was praying. Her eyes instantly sharpened. "You talked to my daughter." Michael nodded, explaining how Lily had prayed for a father and how he'd accidentally walked in. Sarah listened in disbelief, her lips tightening. "She's 6, she said flatly. "She still believes God mails answers like letters. Don't take it personal." "I didn't," Michael replied quietly. "But I can't stop thinking about how sure she was. She believed something good was supposed to happen, and maybe it was." Sarah frowned, folding her arms. "Look, Mr. Reynolds." "Michael Reynolds." "Mr. Reynolds, I don't know what kind of man drives around following little girls' prayers, but we're fine. She doesn't need confusion." Michael nodded, taking the push without flinching. "You're right to protect her. Any mother would. I just wanted you to know she's special. That kind of faith, it reminded me what hope looks like." Sarah looked away, her throat tightening. "Hope doesn't pay rent," she said almost to herself. "No," Michael agreed softly, "but sometimes it keeps the lights on long enough for help to find its way." There was a silence between them, awkward, uneasy, but real. For the first time in a long while, someone wasn't talking at Sarah, they were talking with her. Still, she drew in a steady breath, preparing to end the conversation. "Thank you for your concern, Mr. Reynolds, but please, just let her keep her dreams safe. The world will take them soon enough." She turned to head back inside. Michael hesitated, then reached into his jacket pocket. "I'm not here to interfere," he said. "Here's my card. I run Reynolds Construction out of Nashville. I'll be in Savannah a few more weeks. If you ever need help anything, call me." She didn't take the card, but she didn't refuse it either. "Good day, Mr. Reynolds," she said before walking back inside. Michael stood there for a moment, the sound of clinking dishes and muffled laughter leaking through the window. He finally set the card on the counter outside and walked away. That night, Sarah came home to find Lily on the couch coloring. Mommy Lily said brightly, "You won't believe what happened. God sent me my daddy today." Sarah froze, dropping her purse. "Lily, we've talked about making up stories." "It's not a story," Lily protested, eyes wide. "He came to church. His name's Michael, and he has a dog named Buddy. He said we'll find you together." Sarah's heart clenched. "Sweetheart," she said softly. "Kneeling sometimes, grown-ups say things to be polite. It doesn't mean they're true." But Lily shook her head fiercely. "Mommy, I know it's him. God told me in my heart." Sarah kissed her forehead, hiding the sting in her eyes. "Eat your dinner, baby. I'll heat up some pasta." But as she turned to the stove, something white on the counter caught her eye. Michael's business card. She stared at it, her breath catching. She hadn't seen him leave it there. Lily's voice floated from the couch, calm and certain. "See, Mommy God already left his message." The next morning, rain fell steadily over the city. Michael sat in the chapel again, the same pew where Lily had prayed. He didn't know why he'd come back, maybe to make sense of what he was feeling. His own faith had gone quiet years ago, buried under divorce papers and custody weekends that ended too soon. But the image of that little girl praying like heaven still listened wouldn't leave him. He bowed his head, unsure what to say. "Lord," he murmured, "I don't know what you're doing, but if there's something I'm supposed to do for them, show me how." A few days later, fate or something that felt a lot like it answered. Michael was at the same diner grabbing lunch when he heard laughter from behind the counter. Lily was sitting on a stool, swinging her feet, chatting with the cook. She turned and gasped. "Daddy Michael," she shouted, nearly falling off the stool. Heads turned. Sarah froze, mid-step, eyes narrowing, as Michael stood awkwardly near the door, drenched from the rain. "You again," she said, half in disbelief, half in irritation. "Looks like God's got a sense of humor," Michael replied, half smiling. "He keeps putting us in the same place." Lily jumped down, running toward him, arms open. Sarah caught her mid-run. "Lily, no," she said sharply. The girl's face fell confused. Michael knelt anyway, meeting Lily's eyes. "Hey, champ, you still praying?" She nodded shyly. "Every night." "Good," he said softly. "That means we're both doing our jobs." Sarah sighed, tension draining from her shoulders. The rain pounded outside the diner, quiet. Finally she said, "You might as well sit down. You're already soaked." He did. Over coffee and grilled cheese they talked not about miracles, not about destiny, but about ordinary things, her shifts, his daughters back in Nashville, the quiet ache of doing your best when it never feels like enough. For the first time in years, Sarah laughed, a soft, startled laugh that felt like remembering. By the time he left, the storm had stopped. Lily hugged him tight before he reached the door. "Don't go far, Daddy Michael," she whispered. "God's not done yet." Michael smiled, ruffling her hair. "Neither am I." As he walked out into the fresh, rain-washed air, he couldn't help but think maybe miracles weren't about lightning or angels. Maybe they were just about showing up exactly when someone needed you most. By Friday evening, Sarah Parker's apartment smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and fatigue. The rain outside had eased to a steady drizzle, tapping softly against the window as she folded laundry on the couch. Lily was in her room, humming to herself that same bright tune she always sang when she was happy. Lately, she'd been humming a lot, and Sarah knew exactly why. Michael Reynolds had been stopping by after his shifts, sometimes bringing Lily small gifts, a book, a pack of crayons, or just a few minutes of his time. Nothing about it seemed dangerous, but everything about it felt complicated. Sarah didn't trust easily anymore. Not after what life had taken from her. Her husband, James, had been killed in a car accident when Lily was barely a year old. One minute, she was laughing over dinner. The next, she was standing in a hospital hallway with a doctor who couldn't meet her eyes. Since then, Sarah had built her life on rules, clear, cold, unbreakable rules. Don't rely on anyone. Don't expect miracles. And don't ever let your child get attached to someone who might walk away. But then Michael had walked into that church, and Lily's heart had opened before Sarah could stop it. That night, Sarah was startled by a knock at the door. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and hesitated, listening. A second knock, gentle but sure. She opened the door to find Michael standing there holding 2 paper cups of coffee. "Evening," he said quietly. "I hope this isn't a bad time." He looked almost shy, his blue shirt damp from the drizzle. Sarah hesitated, torn between politeness and instinct. "It's late," she said, her voice guarded. "Lily's asleep." "I know," Michael said. I didn't want to end the week without saying something. Mind if I come in for a minute?" She hesitated again, then stepped aside. He entered, careful not to track in water. They sat at the small kitchen table. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. Michael slid 1 cup toward her. "Decaf," he said. "I figured you could use a break." She gave a short laugh that surprised even her. "That obvious, huh?" "Only to someone who's been there," he replied. They sat for a moment, 2 people used to filling silence with work. Finally, Sarah spoke. "You've been spending a lot of time around Lily." I know Michael said, his tone steady. "I didn't plan it, but she's something else." "She's a child," Sarah interrupted softly. "And children believe things we can't always deliver." "I understand," he said. "But I haven't promised her anything I can't keep." Sarah studied him, her expression unreadable. "She told me you said you'd be her father." Michael shook his head. "She told me God said that." "I just told her I'd never ignore her prayers." "That's a dangerous thing to say to a little girl who's already lost one," Sarah replied. Her voice cracked, slightly betraying the strength she tried to keep. "She's been through enough disappointment." Michael leaned forward, his voice low. "I'm not here to disappoint her or you. I'm here because that little girl reminded me what faith looks like, and maybe because I needed a reminder myself." Something in his words disarmed her. For the first time, Sarah really looked at him not as a stranger, but as a man who might also be rebuilding. His wedding ring was gone, but the pale mark remained. "You have kids," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. "2 daughters," he answered. "Chloe's 10, Mia's 8. They live with their mom in Nashville. I see them twice a month." "So why do this?" Sarah asked. "Why walk into someone else's life when yours already sounds full enough?" Michael's eyes softened. "Because sometimes you meet people who remind you that family isn't always about who you're born to. Sometimes it's about who you show up for." The words lingered. Sarah looked down, tracing the rim of her coffee cup with 1 finger. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe in something again. But trust once broken doesn't rebuild easily. "You're kind," she said finally. "But kindness doesn't fix everything." "No," he agreed. but it's a start. From the hallway came a small voice. Mommy Lily stood in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Is Daddy Michael here?" Sarah froze. Michael smiled gently. "Hey, champ, you're supposed to be asleep." Lily ran to him, climbing onto his lap like she'd done it 100 times before. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "Can you tell me the story about the dog who found his way home?" Sarah watched, torn between fear and wonder, as Michael began the story softly, his voice steady and kind. By the time he finished, Lily was asleep again, her head resting on his shoulder. He stood carefully carrying her to her small bed. Sarah followed, watching as he tucked the blanket under her chin. For a moment, the sight of them, the gentle way he brushed Lily's hair back, the calm in his face, broke something in her. She turned away, pretending to straighten the table. When he returned to the kitchen, she was quiet. "You're good with her," she said almost reluctantly. "I try to be," he replied. "My girls taught me that listening is half the job." "She's already attached to you," Sarah said. "If you walk away—" "I won't," he said firmly. "But if you'd rather I stay away, I will." Sarah shook her head slowly. "No. She needs this. I just need to know it's real." Michael reached into his pocket and pulled out a small photo, him with his daughters, smiling under a summer sun. He handed it to her. "That's my reel," he said simply. She stared at the picture, then at him, her walls beginning to crack in the quietest way. "You're married? I was," he said softly. "We're on good terms, but that part of my life is over." She nodded, unsure what to say. Then maybe she whispered, "We can try this carefully, for her sake." Michael smiled, relief softening his face. "Carefully works for me." He gathered his jacket, pausing at the door. "You're stronger than you realize, Sarah." She gave a small, tired smile. "No, I just learned not to expect rescue." "Maybe this isn't rescue," he said. "Maybe it's a partnership." When the door closed behind him, Sarah stood still, coffee cooling on the table. In the next room, Lily's steady breathing filled the air. Sarah exhaled slowly, realizing she'd just let someone in for the first time in years. She wasn't sure if she trusted him yet. But for the first time since losing her husband, she didn't feel entirely alone. Somewhere, deep inside the wall she had built so carefully had begun quietly to crack. It was a bright Saturday morning when Michael pulled up outside Sarah's apartment with his truck freshly washed and a nervous smile on his face. He had invited Sarah and Lily to Charleston across the river to spend the day with his family. For weeks, he had been visiting the Parkers almost daily, helping Lily with her school projects, fixing the leaky faucet in the kitchen, bringing Sarah takeout after late shifts. But this invitation was different. This wasn't just kindness. It was connection. It was a test of whether trust could really grow roots. Lily was already waiting by the door when he arrived, her small backpack slung over her shoulder, clutching her stuffed rabbit in one hand. "Daddy Michael, are we going to your house today?" she asked, her voice bouncing with excitement. Sarah appeared behind her, dressed neatly in a light blue blouse, her hair tied back. She looked both nervous and grateful. "We are," she said, locking the door behind her. "But remember, Lily, we're guests. Be polite." Lily nodded solemnly. "Yes, ma'am, but I already know they're gonna love me." The drive from Savannah to Charleston took 2 hours, but it passed like a moment. Lily sang along to songs on the radio while Michael told stories about his 2 daughters, Chloe and Mia. "They love making cookies," he said with a grin. "But fair warning, your kitchen will look like a flour tornado hit it afterward." Sarah laughed softly, a sound Michael had come to treasure. It wasn't forced this time. It was light, real. The kind of laugh that came from a place beginning to heal. When they arrived, the Reynolds home stood warm and inviting at the end of a quiet street lined with oak trees. The front porch was strung with wind chimes. and the sound of children's laughter drifted from the backyard. Laura Reynolds stepped out to greet them. She had a calm, open face, and the kind of smile that put people instantly at ease. "You must be Sarah," she said, extending her hand. "And this must be Lily. I've heard so much about you." Lily beamed. "I heard about you too. You bake cookies?" Laura laughed. "Then we're already friends." Inside, the air smelled of cinnamon and vanilla. Chloe and Mia came running, their ponytails bouncing, eager to meet the little girl they'd heard about for weeks. "Hi, Lily," Chloe said. "Want to see our fort?" Before Sarah could even nod, Lily was swept away, giggling, disappearing down the hall. For the first time in a long while, Sarah found herself standing still with nothing to worry about. Laura guided her into the kitchen. "Coffee?" she asked. "Or maybe something stronger for the nerves," Sarah smiled, relaxing a little. "Coffee's perfect." While the kids played, Michael joined the women in the kitchen, leaning against the counter. "Looks like they're hitting it off," he said, glancing toward the sound of laughter. Sarah nodded, her eyes soft. She's never had other kids around. She's always been the grown-up at home. Laura reached over, touching Sarah's arm gently. "Then let her be a kid today, you too, if you can manage it." Sarah met her gaze and smiled a silent thank you, passing between them. After lunch, they all walked down to the riverbank behind the house. The girls collected smooth pebbles and painted them with bright colors, tiny hearts, stars, and words like hope and family. Lily's rock simply said faith. She held it up proudly for Michael to see. "This one's for you," she said, "because you're part of my prayer." He swallowed hard emotion, tightening his throat. "I'll keep it forever, kiddo," he said softly. As the sun dipped lower, turning the river gold, Michael lit the grill while Laura and Sarah prepared dinner together. The air filled with the smell of barbecue and the sound of easy conversation. For Sarah, it felt almost unreal, like stepping into a life she thought she'd lost long ago. She caught herself watching Michael laugh with his daughters, his easy way of balancing fatherhood and kindness. And for the first time, she didn't feel afraid of what Lily's attachment might mean. Maybe she thought some prayers were meant to be shared. Later that evening, the family gathered on the porch, wrapped in the glow of string lights. Chloe brought out a guitar, and soon the girls were singing, their voices blending into the quiet rhythm of the night. Lily curled up beside Michael, leaning against his arm. "This is what I dreamed about," she whispered. "A family that doesn't end when the sun goes down." He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "And look where faith got you," he said. "Right here under the lights." Sarah sat across from them, watching her daughter's happiness like it was something sacred. Laura handed her a mug of tea and said softly, "You've done a beautiful job, you know. Raising her. You did it all on your own, and she still believes in love. That says everything about you." Sarah blinked back sudden tears. "I wasn't sure I did," she admitted, "but maybe I just needed help seeing it." Laura nodded. That's what family's for. As night fell, the children reluctantly said their goodbyes. Lily hugged Chloe and Mia like sisters she'd known forever. Before getting into the truck, she ran back to Laura and whispered something in her ear. Laura smiled and kissed her cheek. "I'll keep that promise," she said. In the car, as they crossed the bridge back toward Savannah, Lily fell asleep with her painted rock clutched in her small hand. Sarah watched her reflection in the window, peaceful content safe, and felt something shift deep inside her. The wall she had spent years building was no longer a fortress. It had become a doorway, and beyond it waited a life she was finally ready to walk into. 3 months passed, and the rhythm of life had changed in quiet, beautiful ways. Every Friday afternoon, Michael Reynolds would drive across the bridge from Charleston to Savannah, his truck carrying more laughter than luggage. Sometimes he brought his daughters Chloe and Mia, and sometimes just himself and Buddy, the golden retriever who had started it all. Sarah would have dinner ready, nothing fancy, just homemade pot roast or chicken stew, and Lily would be waiting by the window, the same spot where she used to wait for prayers to be answered. Now she waited for family. The once quiet apartment had found its warmth again. There was music in the kitchen, children's drawings taped on the refrigerator, and a steady hum of laughter that Sarah never thought she'd hear inside those walls again. Michael never tried to take James's place. He didn't have to. He brought something different, presence, steadiness, the kind of care that didn't demand anything in return. He helped with school pickups, fixed the squeaky door, and always made time for Lily's stories, no matter how long or wild they were. It was on one of those visits that the first real test came. Michael walked in one evening, his face quieter than usual. "Got a call today," he told Sarah once Lily had gone to bed. "They want me to take a project in Texas. It's a 6-month contract." He tried to sound casual, but his tone betrayed him. Sarah stood still, her hands tightening around a dish towel. "When would you leave?" she asked softly. "Next week," he said. The silence that followed was heavy. For Sarah, the thought of losing the man who had become part of their world was a quiet heartbreak she hadn't prepared for. For Lily, the news hit harder. The next morning, she sat at the kitchen table, her eyes downcast. "Are you leaving forever, Daddy Michael?" she asked in a trembling voice. Michael knelt beside her, meeting her eyes. "No, sweetheart," he said gently. "It's just work. I'll call you every day and I'll be back before you know it." She hesitated. That's what people say before they don't come back. Her honesty sliced through him. "I promise," he said softly, placing his hand over hers. "I'll come back. You can hold me to that." The day Michael left the apartment felt empty again. Sarah tried to stay strong for Lily, but she could feel the ache in her daughter's silence. Every night before bed, Lily whispered a prayer, the same one she had prayed in that little chapel months before. "Dear God, thank you for giving me a daddy. Please take care of him wherever he goes." Weeks passed, then months. True to his word, Michael called every evening. Sometimes it was video, sometimes just a voice message. He told Lily about the big Texas skies, the endless roads, and how Buddy missed her belly rubs. Lily, in turn, told him about her spelling tests, her art projects, and the way her mom smiled more now. Sarah tried not to show it, but she missed him too. The easy company, the way he filled a room without trying. Then, one Saturday morning, Lily came running into the kitchen waving a letter she found in the mailbox. "It's from Daddy Michael," she shouted. Sarah took the envelope, recognizing his neat handwriting. Inside was a photo of a sunset over a dusty Texas plain, and beneath it a small silver cross pendant. The note read, "For the day you first believed." Tears blurred Sarah's vision as she read. Lily slipped the cross over her neck and smiled proudly. "He didn't forget," she whispered. Time moved gently after that. The bond between the Reynolds and Parker families only deepened. Laura called Sarah often, checking in like an old friend. Chloe and Mia sent postcards with doodles and jokes. What began as a miracle had grown into something steadier, an extended family that didn't fit any definition but love. By spring, Michael's contract ended. One evening, as Sarah and Lily sat watching the rain through the window, the sound of a familiar truck rumbled in the distance. Lily bolted to the door before Sarah could stand. When she flung it open, Michael stood there soaked from the rain, but smiling wide. Buddy barked and wagged his tail behind him. "Told you I'd come back," he said. Lily threw herself into his arms, laughing through tears. "You're really here." Sarah stood at the doorway, her hand over her heart. "You didn't even call," she said, her voice breaking between laughter and disbelief. "Wanted it to be a surprise," he said. His voice softened. "I missed home. That night, they didn't talk about the future. They didn't need to. It was written in the quiet glances across the table, the way Lily leaned her head against Michael's shoulder, the soft peace that filled the room. Months later, on a warm Sunday morning, the small congregation at St. Anne's Chapel gathered for a community service. Lily stood near the front pew, her silver cross glinting in the sunlight. When the pastor asked if anyone wanted to share a testimony, she raised her hand shyly. A while ago, she began, her small voice carrying across the room. I asked God for a daddy. I prayed in this church right there. She pointed to the altar, and he answered right away. But I learned something. God didn't just send me a daddy. He sent me a family. And when I pray now, I just say thank you. The chapel was silent for a moment. Then Michael rose from his seat and clapped once, twice, and the sound spread until everyone joined in. Sarah wiped a tear from her cheek. Later, as they stepped outside, the sunlight broke through the clouds, scattering gold across the wet pavement. Lily tilted her face toward the sky and smiled. God still listens, she said simply. Michael placed his arm. When we look back on the story of Lily Parker, her mother Sarah, and Michael Reynolds, we see a portrait of faith meeting grace in the most human way. It began with a prayer. A child's plea whispered in the quiet of St. Anne's Chapel in Savannah. Lily's words were simple, but they carried the kind of purity only a child's heart could hold. God, please send me a daddy. That moment was small in sound, but vast in meaning. And when Michael walked through those church doors just minutes later, what looked like coincidence became a spark of divine timing. Over time, what began as an unexpected meeting grew into something sacred. Michael wasn't just the answer to Lily's prayer, he was the missing thread that would stitch together three broken pieces of life. Sarah, who had long believed she needed, no one learned that allowing love back in was not a sign of weakness, but of courage. Lily, who had felt the loneliness of absence, discovered that God listens even to the smallest voice. And Michael, who had carried his own regrets and losses, rediscovered purpose through compassion and connection. Together they built something rare in today's world, a family not defined by blood, but by love freely given. Their story reminds us that miracles aren't always loud. They don't always come wrapped in lightning or fanfare. Sometimes they arrive quietly through the kindness of a stranger, through a shared laugh, through a moment when one heart decides to listen to another. Sarah found strength in surrender. Michael found peace in giving. And Lily taught them both that faith doesn't require proof. It only needs trust. As the days turned into months, their lives intertwined naturally. The once silent apartment became filled with warmth, music, laughter stories, and small moments that mattered more than any grand gesture. The pain that had once built walls around Sarah's heart became the very foundation of her growth. Lily's innocence continued to heal the room simply by existing in it. And Michael's presence reminded them that grace doesn't erase the past, it redeems it. What can we as viewers take from their story? It's this: faith doesn't guarantee an easy road. It opens your eyes to the road already under your feet. We all face seasons of waiting moments when our prayers seem to fall into silence. But as Lily's story shows, sometimes God answers in ways we don't expect. Sometimes He doesn't send miracles to us. He sends people through us. The kindness you show today might be the prayer someone whispered last night. So, maybe the question isn't whether God still listens, it's whether we still do. Whether we still pause long enough to hear the quiet calls around us, to show up for those who've stopped expecting help, to believe that love, real, unconditional love, still changes lives. If this story moved you, if it stirred something inside you, don't let it end here. Carry its message into your own world. Be that listener, that comforter, that unexpected answer to someone else's prayer. And if you'd like to keep walking with us on journeys like this, stories of hope, faith, and the beauty of everyday miracles. Please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Your support is what helps us continue to tell stories that heal and inspire. Every comment and every share is more than engagement, it's encouragement. It tells us these stories matter, that hearts still respond to kindness, and that heaven even now still listens.